So I can't believe we're almost at 100. So we're at 95 now.
And I know I'm getting to that point because I'm starting to remember things. Like people will bring up something. It's like, oh yeah, we talked about that on our podcast. It's like, which one? I don't remember.
I don't remember what number. Yeah.
Go look it up. We talked about this.
When I was at the funeral the other day, I know this lady, Jean. I think she lives up there. She volunteers one day a week at Agate. And I was talking to her about my podcast, and she was like, okay, you got to remember, I'm 80. How do I get to your podcast? So we literally sat down and went through on her phone, and I wrote down directions for her. I said, here's my email and phone number in case you can't figure it out. But she was all happy. She's like, oh my God, really? And I go, yeah, we've done episodes on this and this and this. And she thought it was totally cool. She didn't know anything about Dobbies. So I'm like, well, these were the last 5 episodes. And I go, we did stuff on theaters around the Panhandle going back to the late 1800s. She's like, what? So, I think we got another viewer or listener.
One more.
Yay.
We're up to 10.
And it's so hard to tell because I don't go look purposely, because if I start paying attention to that stuff, then I subconsciously start skewing my stuff to certain things. Like, oh, if I write this thing, I know Connor will like it. He reads my stuff every week. So like my blog, I have an email that goes out to 57 people, and anybody can sign up for it, and then I'll have 58. All I do is to check the program to make sure it got sent out. I don't look at who read it. And how many, I could check to see who read it and how many times they've read it. And I don't do that because then I'll be like, oh, Connor read that blog post 5 times. I should probably write more things like that so that we get, I don't want to do that. I want to stay true to what I want to write. If I think it's cool, I'll do it. And it's the same with the podcast. I can see that, we got a 5 rating on Apple iTunes. I refuse to go look and see if that's one person that gave us a 5 or 10 people. I don't know. Exactly, So I try to stay away from it because I want to tell the stories that I find are cool, and usually it's ones that you find are cool too. I don't think you've been bored yet in any of our stories.
Definitely not.
And we've been talking about people a lot lately. So we're shifting today on storytelling on the plains, and we're going to talk about a building which is located in Scottsbluff. I admit I got a little overwhelmed, and I put the book back over here, the Sioux County book, because, I want to do that. Oh, that's going to take me like 3 weeks to do. Okay, we'll put that on the back burner for now. Oh, I want to do that. Oh, that's going to take too long. Oh, I want to, and it just kept piling up. So I went into my folder with all my notes, and I found at 1424 4th Avenue is the Fontenelle Apartment House. And
good old Fontenelle.
Yeah, and I didn't realize why I had written it down, so I went back and reread all the notes again, which most of the notes are from its application to the National Register. That's where I got most of the information. So the Fontenelle Apartment House is significant to the town of Scottsbluff due to the historic pattern of community planning and development in Scottsbluff, Nebraska. So for today's episode, like I just said, I'm going to be quoting from that application a lot. I haven't found much information elsewhere, and I think they did a really good job describing the whole thing. That there may be other information out there. The Fontenelle was built 17 years after I can't talk today, Connor. This is what happens when you take a week off. The Fontenelle was built 17 years after the birth of the city of Scottsbluff and is a rare urban property type, according to its application form. The Fontenelle is a good representation of a young community's eagerness to develop into an urban and cultural center for the surrounding region. And I know if you're like me, you drive around, you're like, oh, that's a neat looking building, and you don't really think too much about it. But in the early days of Scottsbluff, this was a big deal. And I learned a whole lot about architecture I never thought I would learn about. So
Yeah, the Fontenelle is, I mean, we'd call it posh. I mean, it really is posh.
Yeah.
It is one of those buildings that it's always stuck out to me. I was one of the lucky ones I actually got to go inside of it.
Oh, nice.
So it's a very fun building. I actually had buddies that lived in there. So,
Oh, nice. We need to find some people that live in there so we can go take pictures.
It's a pretty place.
Yeah. So the building represents the arts and crafts style of building, which has several distinctive characteristics and was a popular architectural movement between 1900 and 1940. I actually had to go look this up and learn about it, because when you think arts and crafts, you think of stuff you did in elementary school. You don't think of building, but it's this whole subset of another subset of architecture, of building. So that's what we're going to learn about right now. It had its origins in England during the mid-19th century as an antidote to the dehumanizing effects of the Industrial Revolution. It looked back to a time before craftspeople were replaced by machines. Its roots were philosophical rather than architectural, and it encompassed many art forms. And I thought about that, when I leave Cheyenne to come back home, I'll pass this one building on the way out of town, and it's an example of brutalism. And it always reminds me of the county courthouse back home in New York, because it was made with the same architectural style, and that style is very dehumanizing to me too, but it was popular in the 50s and 60s.
Oh yeah, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so the attitude with this arts and crafts style was they felt that the Industrial Revolution took too much human out of everything. And so that was the desire with this style, was to bring back the human touches to things. And I think the Fontenelle does that really well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the movement began in the United States, first in Boston at the end of the 19th century, before spreading across the country. Most of the arts and crafts style buildings are houses, and according to the Historic England blog, the arts and crafts movement was inspired by the ideas of writer John Ruskin and the work of artist, poet, and textile designer William Morris. They believed that industrialization had cheapened the quality of goods and reduced the value of labor. They thought that mass-produced objects could not achieve the same level of individuality and artistry as those made by skilled human hands. And I get that. All of my stuff, if we look around the room here, it's all that pressed wood stuff. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I paid a little bit of money for it, but if I had those same exact things actually built by a person, they're going to cost more because they're built more, they're better looking, and they last longer.
Yep.
And this is what these two guys basically thought was the Industrial Revolution is churning crap out. And we don't have good artistry anymore, so we need to find a way to fix that. And
little did they know.
Yeah, I'm like, fast forward 100 years, dude, and let me know what you think of this.
If you're going on that in the 20s, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I would absolutely love to have everything handmade and well made, but I don't have those skills, and I don't have the money to pay someone who has those skills. But I can tell you, I sat in my living room. Our couch is against our main window, so I had to sit on my knees so I could look out the window. My neighbor across the street just had a bunch of spare wood. So last summer he built a bed, and he sold it to somebody. And while he was building it, someone else saw him build it. It was like, dude, can you build me one? So he built two. It took him all summer to build the two. So about 3-4 months to build 2 beds. And those beds will outlive all of us. I mean, they were really neat. And he's like, yeah, I haven't done any of this in a long time. And, just wondered if I could still do it. And he was building a bench to start with old pieces of truck for a friend of his that was retiring. And it was his friend's old truck. So they sent the truck to the junkyard because he had basically, the truck was 9 million years old. And so the son managed to get like the lift gate and a couple of other pieces, and he built the bench from it. And then he was like, I got some spare wood. I wonder if I could do a bed. And then that's what he did all summer. So I was just like, that's very, very cool. And you really don't see that a lot anymore, because as much as I would love my pieces of furniture to be handmade, I can't afford that. And I would still be living on the floor. And, we'd be doing this podcast sitting on the floor next to each other. So houses built in this style were simple and utilitarian, showcasing craftsmanship. So if you just look at the basic buildings, it's just like, oh, okay, that's just a basic square house. But when you look at it, you see the craftsmanship and the little flourishes and why it gets the arts and crafts style name. Each building is slightly different because it used local building material and construction techniques. So you could have the same architect building a house here in Scottsbluff, and then let's say they go 4 hours away to Kearney. You have different building materials and different local techniques. So you're going to have the same person building the house, but it's going to be different just because they really stressed staying local in that respect. If there's any ornate design at all, it reflects the local identity. So you'll see exposed beams, rafters extending past the roof lines, open floor plans, and native materials such as wood, stone, stucco, or brick. And I've seen that kind of style. I think in some ways the arts and crafts style survives, but it is now a little more cookie cutter, and you'll see it. You can just buy a plan online, and then you can build that house in California or Nebraska or Florida or wherever. And you might use local building materials, but they're all going to be the same exact houses.
Yeah. And the style's more less the entire building and more like a facade.
Yeah.
It's like on one side of the building.
You go to the back and you're like, oh,
yeah, it's just
okay.
The back's completely plain. But the front looks really good.
So the most distinctive forms of the arts and crafts movement were the prairie and craftsman styles. The Fontenelle showcases both of these styles. The idea behind the Prairie School was to make the arts and crafts uniquely American. According to Wikipedia's description, the style was marked by horizontal lines, flat or hipped roofs with broad overhanging eaves, ribbon windows, integration with the landscape, and solid construction and craftsmanship. And I have to say, those are the houses that always strike me the most, are the ones that are meant to blend in with the landscape. Those stick out to me more than, oh, my house is purple with pink polka dots, because it's meant to blend in. Yeah. And I'm always amazed at the craftsmanship that went into making that work. So it's meant to blend in, but I tend to see them more often. It reflects discipline in the use of ornament, which was often inspired by organic growth and seen carved into the wood, stenciled on plaster, in colored glass, veined marble, and prints or paintings with a general prevalence of earthy autumnal colors. And speaking of all the stenciling and the colored glass and stuff, that's one thing that's always struck me about old churches in Europe. Is the amount of craftsmanship that goes into making those stained glass windows.
Oh, definitely.
And it's not just, here's a picture that we're putting into glass and we're putting it up here. The design is purposely placed in certain places because of the way the sun shines in, or, and they wouldn't have put this other one here because it wouldn't work, So there's a lot of thought that goes into that. And a lot of people take that for granted. They just walk by and they're like, oh, that's cool. And they keep going. They don't really think about the whole process. So spaciousness and continuous horizontal lines were thought to evoke and relate to the wide, flat, treeless expanses of America's native prairie landscape, and decoration often depicted prairie wildlife, sometimes with indigenous materials contributing to a sense of the building belonging to the landscape. And now the funeral I went to in Harrison this last Monday, inside their church, I was sitting in the back row, and right to my left was one of the stained glass windows, and they had, the one on the other side had flowers, the one by me had wheat, when it's already been picked with the little bushel tied up, and it had different depictions of what's normal up in Harrison for people that live there. And I thought that was a neat little touch to the church, that it has stained glass, because lots of churches have stained glass, but they chose to incorporate natural things that go on. And speaking of which, I'm not well versed in architecture at all, but they had the big open ceilings and the high arch, and the beams were exposed, and it just reminded me of this, that it seems to fit a lot of those design concepts of the arts and crafts style. So the craftsman took arts and crafts and made it its own. Craftsmen included interior design, landscape design, applied arts, and decorative arts, beginning in the last years of the 19th century. Its immediate ancestors in American architecture are the shingle style, which began the move away from Victorian ornamentation towards simpler forms, and the prairie style of Frank Lloyd Wright. And I didn't know till I started reading this that Frank Lloyd Wright did prairie style stuff.
Oh yeah, he did all sorts of interesting.
Yeah,
he did a lot of really cool, interesting buildings.
Yeah, there's that one house that is like out in the woods, and it's got big cubed open window bits. I just can't remember where. I want to say it's in Pennsylvania, but I'm probably wrong. And I've always thought that his stuff fit where he was building, and I thought that was pretty cool. My mom was just, that's ugly. That's not a house, you know.
Well, it is funny. I do have an appreciation for Frank Lloyd Wright's architecture and everything. I would never live there because I do think it's hideous. It's just not my style.
Okay.
I would much rather live in an old Victorian style house.
Okay.
Than something Frank Lloyd Wright. It's just not me.
You would get along well with my mom then. She liked those old Victorian styles.
I appreciate his style, just like I appreciate like the art of it and a lot of that kind of style of art. But no. I would never live in there. It's just weird.
And the one that I'm thinking of that's out in the woods, I would have painted it the same color of the woods. I would have had it blend in, but it's black and it really sticks out.
I just always feel like the people who live inside those homes are like super villains.
Yeah,
that's just the weirdness of the architecture. It's something out of like a Marvel movie.
Yeah. And when you said that, I'm thinking back to the movie. And I've only seen it once, Ex Machina.
Yeah. Ex Machina, yeah.
And I'm like, house kind of looked cool inside, but outside, no. And that poor lady was trapped in the house.
Yeah, Ex Machina, or even like Westworld. If you look at some of the architecture in the modern Westworld, as like, no.
Yeah. So we appreciate Frank's genius. We just don't want to live in it.
Not that I can afford it.
We'll say, that too. It's the same with the pictures I look at of, now I forget the gentleman's name, but he took some of the most famous photos of the monument, and it was on glass plates. And he had to lug his camera and the glass plates up to the top of the monument on that zigzag trail to get these photos. But those photos, you can zoom in and see the tiny detail in the dirt. He was a phenomenal photographer, but if I lived at that time, I don't think I would have been a photographer, because I'm like, you want me to carry how many, and you can't take it all at once, because the glass plates, you've got like 10 glass plates, so you can get 10 pictures up there, and it weighs 20 pounds. You got to lug that up, and then you got to come back down and get your camera, which weighs another 20 pounds. No.
That's why I find some very strong-backed young lads and have some nickels with me.
Yeah. Dude, you want to lug this up for me?
People would do anything for a nickel back then. My great-grandpa told me so.
Okay.
They thought nickels were the coolest thing in the world.
So the Fontenelle is unique because there are elements of all three of these styles in its construction. It also isn't a single-family home, so that also makes it distinct here. Remember, I said that most of these styles were homes, not an apartment building. It was made into an urban apartment house, which was not common at the time. It is also rare in the Scottsbluff community, and it has been in continuous use since it was built in 1917. If you glance at the Fontenelle, it just looks like a rectangle box, a basic building to stick some people in. But let me read to you some of its details in case you find yourself driving by or looking at a picture of the building. The ornamental brickwork located at the top of the Fontenelle's windows, vestibules, and at the cornice line display craftsman elements. I really screwed that sentence up. The wooden brackets even interspersed throughout the linear detail of the cornice, and the vestibules replicates the exposed rafters common in the craftsman style. Additionally, the relatively mass brick columns that support the roofs of the vestibules are common to the craftsman style. The linear form of the cornice and vestibule brickwork also reflects a prairie influence by tending to visually lower the profile of the building and creating a less massive facade than would otherwise be the case. This linear detailing is also clear in the dark face brick pattern of the half-basement level. Instead of designing a solid, massive, pedestal-like base for the building, Henke introduced 4 thin horizontal bands of lighter brick that breaks up the inherently massive character of the base of the building. Henke also used very thin mortar joints and a light-colored mortar that creates smooth, light-colored wall face between the decorative bands of darker face brick. This repeated linear motif is inherent in prairie elements. The need for the Fontenelle arose in Scottsbluff grew quickly. So I kept going. I wanted to say something about the facade. I mean, you can literally take what I read and just look at a picture, and you can follow where all of that stuff is.
And by the way, we encourage you to do that.
Yes.
Because if not, I don't know about you, but that did not sound like a whole bunch of useful information to me. I can't put a picture in my mind out of that sentence.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's okay.
Yeah. It's
hard to describe architecture.
It is.
It's just like art. Unless you know the lingo, you don't know what the hell we're talking about.
Yes. And I was also reading from its application on the National Register, where you have to stick to a certain form of writing.
Oh, yeah.
Because I could have written this as well. I just didn't have the time to rewrite it, and I thought these guys already did it, so I don't want to rewrite it. But I can use more stylish language and interject different words like, this thing is cool, whereas they can't on the application. But if it does, it basically took all the little ornamental stuff and made it part of the building and part of the building's character. And they did it really well, and it still reflects. What are we, almost 110 years later?
I guess I would describe the Fontenelle as, like, imagine all the little bits of a cathedral, like a Catholic cathedral, and all those little columns and increments and all those little holes and cubbies and false pillars and stuff. And they basically made that kind of style into an apartment.
Yeah, that works.
It looks like the Fontenelle literally looks like a church. A part of a church was just lifted off and put there. Like, it doesn't look like a complete church. It looks like the west wing of a church.
They ran out of money. This was all they could build.
But like you said, the inside is all open. There's large open bits. It's really beautiful because I remember the ceilings are just tall. It's massive, massive ceilings. It makes you feel very, very small. There. Beautiful hardwood floors. I mean, old. I think they had the old broilers still, the old steam broiler furnaces. Wow. And so it was very, very comfortable. I don't know if they did now. I went there when I was very, very young. So.
And if they're still working, they may still have them. It depends.
Yeah, because if you can maintain them, I would keep them. Yeah. Those are wonderful. Not only are they pretty energy sufficient, but they add humidity into your house so your skin doesn't dry out. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's very nice.
And for those of you who aren't from around here, I had a plumber here today at my house. Had a horrible accident with an escaped hose out of my washer. And we were talking about there's not a big worry of mold here, but mildew. And we were talking about the differences about how dry it is here compared to where I grew up in New York. And yes, I grew up in New York, an hour north of New York City, which is also an hour north from the Pacific Ocean. The Atlantic Ocean. Oh, God. There's also trees and woods everywhere. If you're going hiking in the dang woods. Mm-hmm. So the humidity is really high there, and you just don't get that here. So to have that built into the apartment to account for that, hey, it's really dry here, we need to get some moisture in the house so that, people's noses aren't dried out. And that happens to me a lot here. I'll wake up in the morning and my nostrils have collapsed because it's just so dry.
And if you go into some of the old places, like up in Harrison, there's still some houses that have the old stoves, the old cast iron, almost Franklin-like stoves, and they still use them regularly, even in the summertime, but you'll often see a big pot of water on top to keep the humidity going.
Keep a little bit of steam going. Yep. So between 1910 and 1930, the population of Scottsbluff skyrocketed from 1,746 to 8,465. And today in 2026, I did not look this up, but we have about 15,000.
In Scottsbluff alone? Yeah. Something like that.
Yeah. So we're roughly double the population from 1930. And it's stayed relatively flat for years here. It's not growing, it's not really shrinking, but it just kind of stays flat. In 1911, Scottsbluff became a city, leaving behind its village origins. In April 1917, Gus J. Appleberg began construction on the Fontenelle Apartment House. At the time, it was considered sufficiently elaborate during a period of tremendous growth in Scottsbluff that the local newspaper, the Star-Herald, remarked upon the initiation of its construction in an article that sums up the spirit of the quickly growing city. Sorry, again, it's that old. This was written in the mid 90s, but the language has changed enough that it's becoming awkward for me to read. Every resident of Scottsbluff is aware that the city is growing rapidly, so rapidly, in fact, that the ordinary resident finds difficulty in keeping track of the advancement unless his avocation is such as requires him to travel over the city daily. For the present time, representatives of the Star-Herald made a tour of the city and counted the newer apartments. Some are very elaborate and represent an outlay of several $1,000s. The new apartment house being erected by Gus Appleberg cost $30,000 has begun. And that $30,000 in 2026 is $944,612.89 today. Again, you can still read and understand that language, but that second paragraph I read is from the paper back in 1917, and you can see where the language has changed just enough that I'm reading ahead while I'm reading out loud, and I'm expecting a different word, and it's not, or they made it singular and it should be plural today, and so it's my own brain stumbling over itself. So Appleberg hired Otto J. Henke to design the Fontenelle. Henke was Western Nebraska's first registered professional architect. Henke arrived in the area in 1906 and oversaw the construction of the Tri-State Land Company, which we covered in a previous episode. I can't tell you what episode number. I probably should have gone back to look, but we've
see what I mean
done
by
that.
too many numbers?
Yeah. Connor and I had a conversation before we started today about chatting with people in town and telling them about the podcast. And after you've been having a conversation about, I wonder about such and such, and we are both responding with, we did an episode about that, but we can't remember the episode numbers.
Yep.
But we remember doing the episode. In case you haven't heard that episode, the Tri-State Land Company was largely responsible for the economic boom in the valley. Once they got that going, everything kind of like just went off in a different tentacle and really helped the town just flourish.
And the architecture of that building is like night and day.
Yeah.
Completely different from the
Yes. Yep. So the Historic Register,
Historical.
I'm going to make you read one.
Register.
One day I'm going to make you read.
That'll be a laugh. Yeah, pick on the guy with dyslexia and get him to read something.
Okay, I'll keep reading. The Historic Register application notes that while there is no definitive proof Henke designed the headquarters of the land company, it is likely he either did or signed off on it. My guess is we just need a headquarters building, dude, and
they just built a building.
Yeah, and they just built a basic building because they didn't need anything fancy. They're just going there.
And it is it is
a neat building.
Neat building for it being a basic building. It's neat, but it is like still 4 walls and a roof.
Yeah,
essentially.
Yeah, you put it next to the Fontenelle, and you're like, I don't want to look at that building. So although the Fontenelle is not a textbook example of the arts and crafts movement, Henke certainly introduced architectural elements that embody the characteristics of the most popular residential style of the time. The Fontenelle is the only known apartment building in Scottsbluff with integrity that exhibits arts and crafts design elements. In a Star Herald article titled "Yesterday Village, Tomorrow a City," the Star Herald. The headline doesn't make sense to me, but whatever.
Just the last part, the Star Herald.
Yeah.
If it was just yesterday's village, tomorrow's city.
Yeah.
Would be the way I think that should be read.
But. Yeah, but whatever. Whatever. I don't. Yeah, I don't.
The guy in charge of marketing was fired.
Yeah. The Fontenelle was described as completed, and the newspaper proclaimed it was one of the most elegant apartment houses in any city of the state and equipped with every modern convenience which science has developed for such structure. And it should be such a structure. I'm just quoting you what the Star Herald wrote, and they made a mistake. And that happens in newspapers. You make a mistake, you forget a word. You spell a word wrong. You forget to close a quote. It happens when you gotta get stuff by deadline and get it out by tomorrow. People miss things. It's okay. The Star Herald later wrote an article when it was available for rent, and the article title is a doozy. So let me read the title. May well feel proud of building, would be a credit to any city no matter how large population of latter might be. Yeah. Huh? Yeah. I'm glad we don't do long titles like that anymore. I listen to the History of English podcast, and it's a podcast about the history of the English language. It's really good. Anyway, we're in the 1600s now, and every time Kevin Stroud, the guy who does the podcast all by himself, it's been running for 13 years now. Mm-hmm. And we're only up into the 1600s. He went all the way back to the Indo-European beginnings, and that's where we're at. But in the last episode, he was reading a book title that he was going to quote from. I'm not kidding you. It took him like a minute to read the title. And he goes, yeah, and he always mentions that titles used to be longer in the past. And this is still long, but it's shorter than what that was in the 1600s. And then I come along to work in the Star Herald 2016 to 2019, and my former editor, one of my nice former editors, he and I would sit and try and come up. I forget the link now, but there was a link where you could plug in a title, and the ideal was 3 to 5 words for a title. You have to tell the story in 3 to 5 words so that someone will actually go read all the details of the title. And he and I used to play around with that all the time. So to even read this one that's about 20 words long is too long. And then the other thing that I learned as well is you're a terrible reporter if your sentence is more than 28 words. And I used to hate this one person that I interviewed because her title was 9 words long and there was no way to shrink it. So I'm like, you already took 9 words out of my sentence. But they've basically found, once you get past 20, it gets difficult to remember what the beginning of the sentence was about. Mm-hmm. So if you can cut that 28-word sentence into a 14 and a 14, it's easy. 1, it's easier to read, and 2, it's easier to remember.
Yeah. You can thank all the book club people for those.
Yeah.
You can imagine just being in a book club. It's like, well, today we're reading Maybe Mayfield Building would be a Cartoon City. And then, what was that book again?
What was the name of that book? Can we just go by the author? So that article indicated that the building was fully occupied save for 2 units, despite not being completely finished. So I noted this because it's funny. The article said that the building is finished and available for rent, and all the apartments are occupied except for 2, even though it's not completely finished yet. So I'm like, which one was it? And my guess would have to be the apartments were ready to rent, but I'm thinking maybe some of the flourishes and some things on the outside maybe weren't done. Yeah. That would just be my guess. So while the Fontenelle was an apartment building, there were other craftsman and prairie-style homes in the city built around that time. According to the application to the Historic Register in 1995, the Nebraska Historic Building Society identified only one extant multiple dwelling with historic integrity from this area of Scottsbluff history, the Fontenelle. So if you don't know what the word extant means, if you think of it in when you're looking for sources, extant is what's outside of that. And so there were other buildings in this style in Scottsbluff. They just didn't survive. And the Fontenelle was the only one in Scottsbluff that has survived, and it's still an apartment building today. Mm-hmm. If you drive around Scottsbluff, there aren't a lot of apartment buildings. There are some, but not your big high-rise ones. Most of them are like 2 floors or...
Most of the high-rise ones are on the outskirts of Gering.
Yeah, yep. And when I think of the ones that there's one in Scottsbluff that's up here a couple blocks west of the hospital. But yeah, all the multiple floor ones are down in Gering. They're usually 2 floors, and by 2 floors I mean you go up a flight of stairs to the apartment or down a flight of stairs to the apartment.
And there might be a basement.
Yeah. And that's they're small. A lot of them are like 4 or 6 plexes. They're not really that big.
Well, and it has changed over the years, unfortunately, because of just how no one can afford a house anymore. But back in the day, there wasn't a lot of people that needed apartments here. Yeah. Now it's becoming much, much more important. Mm-hmm.
Which goes with our next sentence. They were extremely rare until the end of the 20th century, and that's because people could afford to buy homes.
Especially out here.
Yeah. We moved here from New York, and I think we would still be renting in New York if we had stayed. We just knew we were never going to be able to buy a home. And it took us 10 years, and we had when we bought our first home. And it was just the little apart duplex, whatever you want to call it, condo, whatever the heck it was called. And we bought that, and then I'll just be kind and say that the condo complex went downhill, and I couldn't sleep, and it was extremely loud all the time. So we started looking for something, which is this that I have now.
It is a nice, quiet neighborhood.
It is. That's the one big bonus. And I told Paul when we started looking, I told him, you pick something that you're going to be comfortable living in, because I can manage no matter where I live, but it has to be quiet. To the fact that condo, that area was so loud 24/7. I was sleeping in the bathtub the last 3 months we lived there, because it was the only place where I couldn't hear any noise. And I told him, I can't do this the rest of my life. We have to move. So we did. And we were fortunate enough that we got in just before everything started skyrocketing. And unfortunately now we need more apartments than homes to help house everybody.
Well, especially for the younger folk who just, the ones that are just getting out of high school, they're in their 20s, they're trying to get through college, they're trying to get families all started. And so even by the time you're 30, it's pretty hard to have a house nowadays, especially if you have a kid.
Yep.
So yeah, it's incredibly hard. And there's only so many places out here that rent. But so yeah.
Yeah.
We definitely need more apartments to be built in this town.
Yep. So Scottsbluff was built on single-family residential homes, which continue to dominate the landscape today. I do wish we had more apartments. More apartments means more people, which means more business, which means you can grow your town. Right now, we're not growing. You look up there on 42nd Street, that whole area that used to be cornfields. They're slowly building houses, but they want $130,000 just for the land, and you barely have a backyard. And then they're putting close to $500,000 homes up there. Yeah. People can't afford that. That's absolutely ridiculous. If it was me, I would have built apartments up there. I would have done some kind of cool apartment complex.
Yeah, or do what Sioux Falls and all the other small cities are doing, is put the businesses on the bottom and the apartments up above.
And you know what? That's the way it used to be. When my grandma used to tell me that the corner store, she would point out the building in my hometown. She's like, you see that apartment up there? And I'm like, yes. She's like, that's where me and your grandfather lived when we first got married. And your Uncle Dave lived in there for a few years before they were able to save and buy a house. But it was a corner store. And
I always liked that.
Yeah.
I had a couple of opportunities to be in apartments like that, and they were fun. I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved that there's something always going on below me, like a business, just to kind of keep a normal sense of normalcy.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I always thought that was cool. So while the application for the Fontenelle was made in 1995, it's still true that there are a few duplexes and not many multiplexes in Scottsbluff. The multiplexes, like you think of a little apartment building, I don't want to call it a village, but down there south of Gearing, you've got the multiple apartment buildings.
Yeah, they're.
I don't even know what you call them, but when I see them, I'm like, oh, it's an
duplexes. I just call them side by sides.
Yeah,
because they really are they're just rooms. They're apartment places, rooms, whatever. They're just side by side instead of stacked.
Yeah.
So they're set up almost like a motel.
Yes. Yeah. So the Fontenelle was entered into the Historic Register on July 23rd, 1998. There is a website called cityfeet.com, and it has some fantastic pictures of the place. I wanted to take some of the pictures and save them, but I don't know copyright wise. So, but they have some really fantastic photos of it. I want to note that it was continuously occupied until 1948, but then the occupancy gets a bit shaky. So that the application was a little fuzzy on this, that they wrote that it had been continuously habitated since 1917, but
Well, old Mr. Jenkins lived there.
yeah.
He didn't talk to anybody and had a lot of cats, but he lived there, damn it, so it counts.
It was listed as vacant when the historical register application was put in, but I've lived here since 2007, and it's been occupied the entire time.
It's been occupied the entire time since I've lived here.
Yeah.
As a kid, there's always been people that live there.
So maybe it was vacant for a year. I don't know. I don't know enough about the history of that particular time.
I do know before it was put on the register, it was going downhill.
Okay.
I mean, the Fontenelle was one of those apartments that had a bit of a reputation behind it as just not being a very nice place to stay.
So maybe it was vacant for a few years, and some folks said, "Hey, we need to put this on the register because it's got this historical significance." And then someone said, "Hey, let's get it cool."
It also has to do with where it's at. It's not. I mean, it's kind of right behind Broadway. It's not too far away from Broadway, but there's nothing in Broadway as far as businesses or stuff to do. So it's really just kind of set inside a neighborhood.
Yeah.
And there's no parks really nearby, and there's nothing really much to do. So I think a lot of people, like you said, they either pass it and think it's already condemned, or they just don't think
at
much
all about it. Yeah. And if you think back to 1917, there was a lot of open area there.
And if you didn't know it was an apartment, to be honest, you would have thought it would have gotten taken up by a law firm or a dentist's office by now.
Yeah.
To be completely honest, you'd go up to it. It's like, oh, well, that used to be a place people lived, but obviously now, some lawyer bought up the building, or something. I saw like some dentist's office now controls it.
Yeah.
That's what happens to so many of those little tiny houses you'll see all over Scottsbluff.
Yeah, even going down Broadway, you see that.
You'll see a perfectly fine neighborhood, and all of a sudden there's just like this quaint little house, but it's like American Family Insurance or something like that. It doesn't make any sense.
Yep. One of I'm trying to remember who's in it now, but it was a dentist for a long time. One of those nice little quaint houses, and I'm like, that'd be cool to live in. What dentist? What?
I always freaked out because I had one of those dentists growing up here who lived in a little house like that. I hated it. It was creepy. It was creepy. It wasn't like you're going to a dentist's office. It was like you're going to go to some dude's house and get your teeth worked on. I don't know, dude. I don't know.
And back in my hometown, we have a community college, and there were some rich people in town that donated their land to make the community college. Their mansion is now most of the business offices, and I'm creeped out when I go in there because I'm like, I'm going in somebody's house, but you're going into
the building.
Yeah, and that building is actually on the historic register as well. So, but it's got the creaky wooden floors. So you're trying to be quiet because you're not quite sure where you're going in the building, and the floors creak, and then someone's like, "Can I help you?" And you're like, "I don't know." So I did have a quick look online, and apartments there are around $1,000 a month with utilities included. So that's not too bad. I have a friend that just moved into a fourplex next door to Viero, and it's $800 plus utilities, and he's managing just under $1,000 a month with utilities and his rent. So
$850 to $1,100 for. What, and did you say this is a single room, or is this like a studio?
I think it was the one bedrooms.
The one bedrooms.
Yeah.
For a one bedroom, that's a little steep, but this is a historic building. But that, I mean, because $850 to $1,100, that's about your 2-bedroom apartment standard here in Scottsbluff. So
yeah, and so I'm just putting a plug in for them. They're not paying me for this, but you can have cats there, but no dogs.
Yep.
No dogs. I looked on Zillow as well, and it had a history of rentals at $850 in 2018 and 2019, and then more listings in 2025 for $1,100. So it's gone up significantly just in a couple of years. Well, I mean, 7 years, but that's still a lot to go up in 7 years.
Kind of, because during that time you had a reevaluation. Taxes.
Oh, that's right. You had that whole deal with where no one was getting evaluated correctly.
Yeah. We had the whole city get evaluated during that time, and once it was evaluated property, I think a lot of people would be like, "Oh shit, I've been way undercharging people. We need to get into 2025." And be like, "Yeah, no, $850 is all nice, sweetie, but no, it's $1,100. Come on." I mean, this is it sounds like a lot, but honestly. That's just about, you can go to Alliance and it'll be that much. I almost guarantee you.
Yep.
And Alliance is smaller than Scottsbluff. So that's about your average
now. And the apartments that I saw were listed at 900 square feet. I suck at square footage. I can't even tell you how many square feet my house is. I have no idea.
I can remember I was not disappointed by the size. It did, and because of the high ceilings, it didn't feel like cramped.
Okay.
So
I don't use the word unique often, mainly because my former editor, Steve Frederick, will find a way to come smack me upside the head. He drilled that into me. You only use unique when it actually applies. So you use it sparingly. And this time, I really think it fits this building. It is a unique building in this town. And the fact that it's still here 110 years later, that we can look at it, is pretty freaking awesome, I think. So that's all I have on the Fontenelle. I'll apologize for missing last week. Both Connor and I had a bunch of life stuff going on, and we weren't able to sit down.
Irene apologizes. I apologize for nothing.
There you go. We just had a whole bunch of stuff going on, and we tried to figure out if we could cram 2 episodes in 1 week with our schedules, and we just couldn't. So we will be back next week. Fingers crossed nothing else happens and things go well. And we'll be back with something interesting and new. I don't want to promise what I'm working on right now. I'll tell you what I'm working on. I'm working on the tornado from 1991 in Minutair.
Oh, yeah.
And I have been down to Legacy. I have read the Gearing Courier. I have read the Star Herald. I went to the Scottsbluff Public Library. It's a lot of information.
That was the big tornado that occurred the year before I moved here.
Yeah.
Because I moved here, I think we moved here in 92.
Okay.
And that storm was still fresh on everyone's
mind. Yeah. And I know it was a bad storm because for a week the Star Herald covered it.
Yep.
And I'm thankful for that because I have lots of information, but that also signifies to me that it was really big. If the Star Herald covered it every day for a week.
Oh, yeah. Tore up half a Minutair.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's just a lot of information. So I don't want to overpromise and say that'll be our next episode because we also, I don't know if I could get it all done before our 100th episode. We're just going to reminisce.
We're going to do like what you did at school for the 100 days. We're going to get a bunch of 100-something. We'll start giving away to people. Get like 100 nails. 100 screws, 100 M&Ms, 100 Cheerios.
100 M&Ms. 100 Cheerios. I can afford those.
I just remember all the things we did. Because for some reason, us young kids at school need to know what 100 days feels like. So
okay.
I thought that was actually very torturous to do to a poor child. It's like, do you know the concept of time? Do you know how long 100 days is? Do you know how much longer you have left? Well, here's some Cheerios. Yeah. Start counting.
Teacher, I only have 93. You freaking ate 7 of
You ate
those.
7. Liar, Timmy. Don't make me count how many Cheerios I have left to retirement. That's a lot of Cheerios.
I would just get sad looking at that jar that every day I could take one out. It like never empties.
I think it was torture on the kids, torture on the teachers, because there's no way you can feel good as a teacher who was doing the 100-day thing. It's like, oh, crap.
Well, as always, folks, if you have any ideas for stories, please send them on off to us. Storytellingontheplains@gmail.com. Yeah. If you've got ideas. If you know Connor and I personally, just, you probably have our texts or our personal emails and give us some ideas. We do have probably 200 ideas, but
oh yeah, we still have a lot.
We still have a ton, but like the one that my friend Kim gave me about the first murder in Minutair, I had no idea about, but she was just like, "Hey, I read about this today, and it was like 3 sentences," and I go, "Oh, no way, there isn't more on that," and so I went and I did an episode on it. Yeah. So I'm happy to do anything that sounds cool and interesting, and even if it's not cool and interesting, I'll make it sound cool and interesting. So come back next week and listen to us ramble on again. For now, I'm Irene.
And I'm Connor.
And this is Storytelling on the Plains.